Hey folks, Ken Duke here with Fishing Tackle Retailer, and we're here at the 2019 Bassmaster Classic Media Day in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're going to be talking with some of the top pros in the business about what they think are going to be the key baits at this year's Classic. Hey folks, I'm here with James Elam from Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of my picks to do really well, perhaps win this 2019 Bassmaster Classic. James, you have had a ton of success in the last few years. You're still a young guy doing really well in the tournament trail. Let's talk a little bit about the baits you think are going to be players at this year's Bassmaster Classic.
You know, there's a couple things that can happen. I personally think it's going to be a shallow water event, probably much like everybody else. But for me, you know, I think the reaction stuff is really going to play, like spinnerbait and crankbait and stuff like that. But every now and then you can flip a jig into the tree. You know, there's a lot of wood here. It's all stained water kind of fishing, and the fish are up shallow. And, you know, I think this is also going to be the kind of tournament that's won as it develops, just like the past three classics have happened. You got to keep an open mind during the tournament, and you got to get yourself there and contention on the last day, and then it happens for you. So I think that's also another thing that's a way it's going to work out, and that's just kind of the nature of this big event. So, you know, those are the baits. Actually, I'm really excited. I don't know if it's going to be time yet, but I'm going to start flipping this new lizard that I've got with Molix this year. This is my little new lizard that's came out. It's a cute little bait, perfect size for the spawn time. It's got really good action to it is the main key. When you throw it out there, it stays level and all the arms move on it and stuff. These are also all, you know, Molix Kento jigs, one of my favorite jigs to throw. Flat side's going to be a big deal here, and a spinnerbait, maybe even a chatterbait. So those are kind of the baits that I think are going to play.
That's fantastic. Now, with the cold, dirty water, those shape up to me to be some of the really tough conditions for any tournament fishing situation. At what point on Friday, day one of the competition, will you be able to say to yourself, you know, this tournament's either going well or not going well for me? When will you really feel like you know something?
Well, it's funny that you say that. There's two things there. You said cold and dirty water. It's not too cold and it's not too dirty. So I think it's going to be fine. And, you know, if my day's not going well, I'm just going to have to keep moving. That's just, I think, the nature of this place and how it's going to fish. I think you're just going to have to keep a positive mindset and keep moving. You know, a couple of times in practice, we didn't have much wind at all, and it was really hard to get a bite when there wasn't any wind. But I think we're going to have that a little bit, so that hopefully that'll help. We might not have that by the second, third day, but the first day it sounds like we're going to get some good weather for fishing.
There you have it, folks, from James Elam, Tulsa, Oklahoma, perennial Classic qualifier, and a guy who can certainly take down the big one here. You know, I'm here with Ott Defo, and Ott is the pre-tournament favorite at the 2019 Bassmaster Classic here in his hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee. Ott, what additional pressures does this put on you? You've done really well in the Classic. I'm going to give you a stat in a moment, but you've been a great performer in the Classic, but you've yet to take one down. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to be the pre-tournament favorite?
I don't think it hurts anything, and for myself, and you know me well enough to know that a couple things. I want to win every tournament I fish. I don't care if it's at home, if it's in New York, if it's in Wisconsin, wherever it may be. I want to win every single tournament. You know, but as far as just what people expect out of me here, they definitely expect a little more, you know. So I know that that's out there. I know that they feel that way about it. But for me, I want to win. I've wanted to win every single Classic I've fished in. So I want this tournament as bad as any tournament I've ever fished in, you know, but I'm not going to say that it's a whole lot more just because I put so much pressure on myself.
Now, here's a stat for you. Of all the anglers in history who have fished 7 or more Classics, the guy with the best average finish is Ott Defo. I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. I could increase it, though.
Yes, first place will move you up even more. But let's talk a little bit about the baits here because the water's high, it's cold, that river is really moving. What are the baits they're going to play at this year's Classic?
The very obvious factor when you come to East Tennessee in the middle of March is a crankbait. I mean, a crankbait and a jerkbait are your two, you know, staples in any of our lakes this time of year. The jerkbait is going to be much less of a player, though, just because of how dirty the water is. You know, if this water had 3-4 feet of visibility to it, the jerkbait would be as much or more of a player than what the crankbait would be. But with the off-colored conditions, a crankbait certainly is your first choice. A spinnerbait certainly comes to mind. A jig comes to mind. I'm sure there'll be some fish caught on more finesse techniques, you know, shaky heads, that type of stuff as well. But those techniques definitely are the first ones to come to mind. And I don't know of a Classic in recent years that somebody didn't catch fish on a bladed jig. So a bladed jig will certainly be a player as well.
You mentioned East Tennessee and the crankbait factor. What is it about East Tennessee, North Carolina, that guys naturally gravitate toward a crankbait? It's like you guys were born with a crankbait rod in your hand, whereas the guys in Missouri and Arkansas, they're jig guys.
Yeah.
What is it about East Tennessee, North Carolina, and the crankbait?
It is, and I think it's because of what you said. I mean, from the time I first started bass fishing, I was taught to fish with a crankbait. You know, I mean, can be an easy way for a novice angler to catch fish. It's a bait that you throw out and you reel back in. There's a lot more you can do with it than that, but as a general rule of thumb, that's what you do with a crankbait. So it was a bait that was always worked. And a lot of our water in this part of the country, especially when I grew up fishing here, this water stayed off colored a lot of the year. So we would catch fish, in the winter and spring on shallow running crankbaits, and then as it got warmer throughout the year, those fish would move back out deep. We'd catch them on deeper running crankbaits, and throughout the fall, the crankbait was good when those fish were eating on shad, and I think that has a lot to do with it. The fact that our lakes in this region have such a great forage base with shad, whether it's threadfin or gizzard. We thankfully don't have to deal with any herring. And our fish relate to the bottom a lot, and they relate to the bait fish a lot. And when you have a shad imitating bait bumping along the bottom where a bass is living, it's a good chance you're going to catch a fish on it.
Hey, there you have it, folks, from pre-tournament favorite Ott Defo. Let's hope he takes it down, because he would be a fabulous Bassmaster Classic champion. Hey folks, Ken Duke here with Fishing Tackle Retailer. I've got my friend Matt Pangrak from BassZone.com. Matt, we're at Media Day for the Bassmaster Classic. What are you hearing from the guys? What kind of baits do you think are going to be players this week?
Well, it's really an interesting media day, because if you look at the past classics in the years that we've had a lot of really cold snaps, we've been to some Ozark lakes, we've been out east at Lake Hartwell where you have a very specific set of baits. So you've seen some baits, like a jig or a wacky worm. Now, there's nothing wrong with those, but those aren't super exciting classic baits like we had back in the day, when the classic was in the summer and we had the spinner baits play. We had different baits that were unique. This tournament, with the way the conditions are changing on the Tennessee River, on Tellico and Loudon, drop in the water, I think you have a chance in this classic to see some really cool off-the-wall baits play. Specifically, we are in Tennessee. What are they known for? Balsa crankbaits. A lot of different balsa crankbaits, from the PH, Spro Little Johns, the WECs, a lot of out-of-production baits, a speed trap, a wiggle wart. There's a number of different baits, all in that kind of red, orangish hue, that if one of these guys can really get on and figure out the quality, we might see a really cool bait win the classic that just skyrockets in price because no one can get their hands on it anymore.
Guys, there you heard it. Matt Pangrak. Matt is as dialed in on this tournament and pro anglers generally as anybody you're going to meet. Hey folks, I'm here with none other than 2009 Bassmaster Classic champion Skeet Reese. Skeet, you're here at Tennessee River area, Knoxville. What are the baits that are going to be a player at the 2019 Bassmaster Classic?
I think for sure a square bill is going to be a crankbait, I should say, is going to be a big factor this week. A lot of spinner baits, a lot of vibrating jigs, but I think that there's, I'm thinking there's some other baits. Personally, I think, I could incorporate a big swim bait here to have the opportunity to win this thing.
Now, it's 10 years since you won your classic in 2009. That was a river type system, some dirty water. Are you getting any flashbacks?
Yeah, it's pre-spawn cold. I guess there is some similarities. It's rivers. I do love fishing the Tennessee River. It's treated me well in the past. I'm not saying that it's going to do anything for me this week, but I just like it, the way it sets up, and the hard part is just getting those couple key bites each day.
Skeet Reese is on my short list, folks. This is a guy who might take down number 2 this week in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hey folks, Ken Duke here with Fishing Tackle Retailer. We are with perennial Bassmaster Classic qualifier and Bass Pro Tour angler Andy Montgomery. Andy is the master of all things related to jig fishing, and that's why he's a big favorite to do really well in this classic this week. The water's high, it's cold, it's muddy. Andy, what baits are going to be a player at this Bassmaster Classic?
For me, I think it's going to be a lot of power fishing. So your square bills, your spinner baits, your bladed jigs like the Thunder Cricket are all going to play, and maybe even a jig some. But a lot of the power winding baits I think will play good this week. Pre-spawn fish seem to tend to lean towards that type of stuff. The water's dirty, which also leans towards that type of stuff. So a lot of different variables are setting up for it to be a power fishing week.
You're a guy with a great reputation for being able to do whatever it takes. If the bite is tough, you're going to slow down, you're going to do whatever, you're going to grind it out if necessary. Is that the kind of classic we're going to be looking at this week?
No, there's going to be a lot of moving around, I think. It's going to be a very pattern-oriented. I don't think, now I may be wrong, but I don't think a guy can win this Classic off a spot. It's going to be a pattern deal. So there's going to be a lot of moving around for sure.
Hey man, best of luck out there. You're one of the best in the field, and if it's going to be a tough tournament, I like Andy Montgomery's chances.
Well, thank you, Ken. I don't know about best in the field because all these guys are really, really, really good. So competition's stout, but hopefully we'll come out on top.
Hey folks, 52 guys vying for first place of $300,000 at the 2019 Bassmaster Classic. Hey folks, Ken Duke here, Bassmaster Classic Media Day with my friend, the great Edwin Evers, E Squared. Edwin, we're here really to think about the Classic, about the tackle involved in the Classic.
Okay.
What bait styles do you think are going to be a player this week?
You know, Ken, that's a great question, and with how this is setting up, I can tell you that I think 99% of your viewers, that your subscriptions, the people that are followers of the sport, have the 5 baits that I have tied on.
Is that right?
In their tackle box, and I would say they have the same 5 baits that everybody else. It's going to be what's in front of you, muddy water fishing 101. It is what it is. You're going to see a spinnerbait, a square bill crankbait. You're going to see maybe a rattle trap, a jig. That's where it's going to be, and that's how it's going to happen.
Now, one of the things I admire most about you as a pro angler is you're able to change gears. You're the most versatile guy on tour, and whether that means you need to throw a buzz bait and fish fast or grind it with a jig, you're a guy who can adapt and do that. Is this going to be a grinder tournament like I think it might be?
I definitely think so. I don't think it's going to be a tournament that you'll see a guy that wins that goes back down the same stretch. I think he's going to fish what's in front of him. He's going to cover a lot of water. I've got a couple stretches that I want to try to get to tomorrow fairly quick, and then after that, I just want to go fishing. Hey, there's nobody in that pocket. I'll pull in there and fish it.
Now, put you on the spot a little bit. At what point during the day tomorrow, and if it even happens tomorrow, will you know whether things are going your way or not going to go your way?
That'll be about 3 o'clock when I start running back. So
it's going to take all day to figure it out on some level, to figure out where you stand maybe.
It doesn't have to happen in the first couple hours. It can, we've all seen these events. You can look at the Bass Pro Tour and what happened in some of those events. It can happen in the last 30 seconds. You can catch a 5, 6, 7, 8 pounder, and completely change your day. So your day's not set in stone at noon, at 11, at 1 o'clock. It's not set in stone.
All right, let's change gears for just a moment. We're here at the BASS Bassmaster Classic, but Edwin, you're one of the best in the business on Major League Fishing and the Bass Pro Tour now.
I had 2 events now, so.
But you've been fishing for years with Major League Fishing. The Bass Pro Tour is new, but man, you're a standout with Major League Fishing before that. Now, one of the things I'm seeing in Major League Fishing that I think is so interesting is it's putting more emphasis perhaps than the 5-fish limit tours do on things like finesse and getting a lot of bites. Do you think it's going to change trends in the tackle industry?
I don't know that it's going to change trends, because you say finesse, and I haven't done anything finesse in the first 2 events, and I'm leading the points. I mean, I think the lightest line I've had tied on, other than the one fish on a drop shot that weighed 8 pounds and 2 ounces, everything else came on 20-pound test, the 50 pounds, and the Toho, all the stuff at Toho. So, it's too early to really tell, but the bottom line in the Bass Pro Tour is we just have to get bites, and, whatever that bite weighs, that's the beauty of it, because in the past when you fish a 5-fish event and you lose a 2-pounder, it doesn't hurt. And it's almost like when you're reeling that 2-pounder in, you kind of let a little air out, you kind of take a 20-second break, but albeit a 20-second break, when you magnify that 2-pounder, that it counts like a 5-pounder, it counts like a 1-pounder, because they all go to your bottom line. You never have that 20-second break all day long. Everything is magnified because every fish goes to your bottom line, and it's in a very, very intense format.
That's a great insight I had not thought of. Hey folks, my friend Edwin Evers, 2016 Bassmaster Classic champ, going for number 2 this week in Tennessee.
Thank you, Ken, for having me on.
Hey everybody, Ken Duke here with Fish and Tackle Retailer. My guest this time, none other than James Hall, longtime editor of Bassmaster Magazine. James, we're here at Classic Media Day.
We are.
What are the baits that are going to be a player out there this weekend?
I tell you, here's what I can tell you. As I've walked through 5 or 6 boats and I see the lures that are dangling on the floors of these boats, and what it looks like to be consistent is a square bill crankbait in a reddish color. Some would call it crawfish. Some would call it crayfish. I call it red.
The technical terminology comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all over it. Then there's, I'm seeing creature baits that have been flipped. and then some like swing head jigs with some sort of creature on them as well. So I'm
A
assuming
hard head biffle bug style.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm seeing creatures, I'm seeing square bill crankbaits, and then some other random Texas rig plastics. So to me, it looks like they're either going to crank them or they're going to flip them.
Now, what are the odds that these are all decoys just designed to throw Bassmaster magazine off?
I asked that exact question, and I was told under no absolute way and under these heavens would they do that to me.
Excellent. As you know, folks, nobody more honest than a group of anglers getting ready to fish a tournament. You heard it here on FishingTackleRetailer.com. Hey folks, Ken Duke here with Jared Lintner, multiple-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier. We're here at 2019 Classic Media Day in Knoxville, Tennessee. You know, Jared, you're a guy who uses a lot of different baits, known as being one of the most versatile guys on tour. What do you think are going to be the bait types that are going to be key this week at the Classic?
Man, you know, winding. The fish are in full-blown pre-spawn. The water temp, since we got here, it started out at 46. Yesterday, I seen water temps in that 52-degree range. So, covering a lot of water, winding, crankbaits, rattle trap, spinner bait, obviously. Those type of baits I think are going to be dominant. However, I think if a guy figures out the right bait to flip on those big laydowns or dock pilings or rocks, stumps, or whatever, you figure out that bait, which I've tried, and I've had random bites, but the guy that figures out like a jig color or something, he's going to get those bigger bites.
All right, Jared, because I like you so much, and because I'm also mean and unfair, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I haven't asked anybody else this question today, but you stay on top of the trends as much as anybody I know. What are some of the trends we can look for at this year's Classic Expo in the bass world?
Oh man, the swim bait thing, about 3 or 4 years ago, it kind of died off a little bit, but now with the resurgence of people catching big ones all over the country, but like especially in Northern California again, like Maloney's, these guys are throwing these baits. I've seen some the other day. I'm like, that thing is identical to a trout. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference if you got it on a plate in a restaurant. So I think the swim baits are going to be a big deal, and also the whole Ned rig concept, the Nico Ned rig type thing. There's several different baits that I've seen, samples of and little teasers of that I think will. I mean that bait. If I take my kids fishing and it's a tough bite, I just tie them on a Ned rig and they catch fish. I mean it's. I'm not saying it's idiot proof, but if you want to catch fish, tie on a Ned rig and throw it.
Now you bring up another subject. I was hoping to let you go after a quick couple of quotes, but now you brought up a cool one here. You're fishing on the Bass Pro Tour now, having just left the Bassmaster Elite Series. And one of the things I'm noticing with Every Fish Counts is I'm expecting there might be a resurgence or a renewal of finesse fishing at the highest level of tournament fishing. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. Having done this for this many years now, I'm programmed to catch big ones. I mean, I want to catch the biggest one that lives there. With that being said, I'm not as reluctant to pick up a drop shot or skip a shaky head under a dock or the Ned rig. I mean, I had one tied on a Conroe. I think my 3 smallest bass at Conroe were on the Ned rig, but they counted. So I mean, what I can see happening is instead of a guy having 3 rods on the deck or 4 rods on the deck, now he's going to have 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 because just of what we were talking about. He's going to have a shaky head, a Ned rig, a drop shot, a wacky rig, whatever, because you see something in the water and you're like, man, I could bet you I could catch a keeper off that. You better throw at it.
There you have it, folks, from one of the best in the business, Jared Lintner from Arroyo Grande, California. Huge reputation for throwing a frog, throwing a buzzbait, flipping a jig, but this guy fishes everything. Folks, it's been kind of a long 3 hours, but Bassmaster Classic Media Day 2019 in Knoxville, Tennessee is a wrap. We had a great time. We talked to a lot of pros about the baits they think are going to be key to this year's Classic, about the trends that they see in some of the bass market right now, and we're going to have even more coming at you from the Bassmaster Classic Expo.